Well, I'll call this resonant leadership. So how we can navigate these uncertain times or dicey times with authenticity and resilience. This, by the way, was suggested by ChatGPT as the best title for what I wanted to talk about. So let's see how well ChatGPT did. And inspiring this talk, I'll go back to something that WSS posted on LinkedIn about what this whole weekend was about. And I just reflecting on a post on LinkedIn, it said, what skills, values, and understandings will tomorrow's leaders need to create a sustainable, equitable world? How can educators help them get there? Yeah, that was kind of setting the frame for our precious time here today. And what I would like to offer for you is a very foundational understanding that change happens through resonance. And that's actually a really good thing to know. And I'll explain why in a minute. As we've seen throughout these presentations, the values for living into this have to do with a kind of shift around what we care about, what we really fundamentally care about. So caring about people, about the planet, about our future versus today's profits or this quarter's results or whatever. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's not enough for what we're facing, not enough for these times. We need a bigger sense of value. And then the skill is how each of us, every one of us, every one of our students, every one of the people in our organizations, everyone in the world that we touch, how we can help them make their authentic difference with resilience, be resilient in this time. Because in addition to leadership skills, this time is going to call for a deep, deep resilience. So let's go. Let me just start with a kind of a physics approach. Life is a flow of energy. That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. What do I mean by energy? I mean, if it's not solid and it's not liquid and it's not gas and we're talking about it, it's a form of energy. So, and even those things, by the way, if you know your Einstein, are a very condensed form of energy. So really it's all energy. But the kinds of things we're working with, whether it's a process or a learning construct or thought itself, or relationships, the vibe of a feeling, the vibe of even this conference, culture, climate, these are forms of energy. And how we play into and work with this energy is where we ourselves are like antennas for them. What I mean by antennas is we have these senses that take in energy and turn it into, well, you heard Michael talk about it. You know, we have data, we have information, we have decision-making things, you know, that help us make decisions. We have a whole process for taking in energy. And I would even define, where one definition of leadership is you take energy and you turn it into things that matter, things that help people here on earth, right? You might get, what's inspiration, you know? What's vision? These are forms of energy. What's the zeitgeist? You know, the temper of the times. You know, it's an energy. It's an energetic sense. If we can tap into it, conduct it through ourselves, we can turn it into things that help people. How wonderful is that? So to do that is the process of resonance. Resonance is how everything happens. It's how energy changes form. Resonance is to vibrate with something. And it is the principle, the physics principle that underlies how matter is pulled out of energy, but also how energetic forms interact. So it is a universal principle. And you see it all the time in everyday life. Waves come together, they're going to interact, something's going to happen. This is not a belief system. It is a fact. And what's so incredible about resonance is that it's highly specific. So there's a match that happens for things to vibrate together. So in that little game that we just played, and honestly, I didn't put Tracy up to it, but it was a perfect introduction to this talk because we were intentionally mirroring each other. But in a way, that's how resonance always works. So if you or I were to shout into the strings of this grand piano, the strings that match the vibrations of our voice would start to vibrate. Because they match, just like when those waves come together, when they match, they can interact with each other. Or when we have mirror neurons, it's a way our nervous systems match one another, right? So the strings that do not match my voice will just sit there, doing nothing. So we create activity. When I say energy is contagious, I mean we're creating resonance as people match our vibrations. And we vibrate with things we match. We light up. We get excited. We have a whole bunch of energetic and emotional words to describe what happens to us, but we're loaded with systems that are registering how we take in the environment and how we react to it. And resonance is specific. So when something matches us, we light up. You know, we heard about astrophysicists earlier and girls going into science. But when I was a little girl, I lit up with the idea of being an astronaut. That completely consumed me. They have me writing NASA at the age of 13 on what I had to do to best prepare. This is actually what I asked them. What courses do I have to take in junior high school to best prepare me for my life as an astronaut? Of course, we laugh as educators, right? Well, it's a foolish question. But you know, they wrote me back. And it was not a form letter. They actually wrote back a real letter because the first sentence of it said, it doesn't matter what classes you take at junior high school, but by high school, you need to be taking science and math. Isn't that grand? And I tacked that letter to my wall and followed it to a T. I took every science and math class under the sun and went into physics and then biophysics. I wanted to understand energy of the human being. And, you know, I didn't become an astronaut. You saw in my bio, I did work for NASA for a decade and got very close to this, but it turned out that's not my path. It turned out my path is something else. But when things light us up, it does not lead us astray. It still leads us in a direction that is directionally correct, as this did for me. And likewise for you. In leadership, we could even define leadership as expressing what lights us up in service of others. You know, why do you teach what you teach? Because something about that subject lit you up, right? So you wanted to share your passion for it. Why do you lead in what you lead? You could sense in the speakers we've heard today, the passion for what they care about. These are topics that lit them up, right? So that's how we're making our difference, that we're in this world together and like little antennas that register or vibrate when something hits us, we are activated by those things. So resonance is the key to all relationships. And it's all relationships because absolutely nothing exists on its own. Nothing. There's not even an energetic form that exists on its own. Everything arises in resonance. So now how does the resonance work? Well, we had an example even in that little game one another, when we were mirroring one another. But in something like the human nervous system, we're loaded with ways of reflecting one another within ourselves. When we have a really resonant conversation, you know what I'm talking about, those kind of conversations where you're just clicking with someone. If we were to put on EEG caps and measure our brain waves, we'd see they'd come into coherence. Or if we absolutely aren't following each other, we're going this way, we're missing each other, they would not be in coherence. So the processes of, quote, getting on the same wavelength, which we kind of used in colloquial language, is actually what's going on. There is a sense where we're building coherence. A lot of what this summit is about is how we can make that signal bigger. So as Tahia said, that we aren't just making a noise, we're making a statement. A statement is a coherent message, right? With one another in our relationships, we're making maps of each other all the time. Another principle I would just share with you that I feel is part of what is explaining some of what we're stuck with, we're facing right now a lot of what Michael was talking about, and all the systems and the capitalism and the systems that we're inheriting to work with and trying to solve this issue of the climate crisis. That one of the principles is energy creates forms. I mean, you've already seen this. You've all seen water running down a hill. It's going to make a little crevice, right? It'll make a little crevice. So it's etching form by how that flow runs. And early on, you can kind of see at the bottom of this picture, it has a choice, go this way, that way. That's kind of similar. They're kind of equal. It's going to choose one. And then over time, the form channels the energy. There's so much form in place that the energy is going to go that way. So it's hard to go into a corporation, for example, and be a disruptor, because so much energy in that corporation will channel your energy a certain ways. Or to be an educator in a system that has all these policies and rules directed by a local school board that has all these political implications, because the energy will be channeled a certain way. So be patient with yourself. Be patient with the system. This is a physical fact, right? It's not right, wrong, good, bad. It's what happens. It's what happens. And it happens in us too, because this same process is playing out in our nervous system and in our whole body system, that has energy runs through us from our life experience, from intergenerational trauma, from all these things. It's creating forms. Learning itself is a way in which energy goes through us and creates neural pathways. We learn things. So over time, those forms direct our energy, for better and for worse. Over time, we learn new things, but we also develop habits that may limit what we're able to do. We may also develop ways of, in a way, trying to protect ourselves, or the trauma, or what we haven't worked through, or again, if we're feeling disconnected, where our energy is really impeded. And there's been some wonderful research around, again, how energy changes things in our body, like heart rate variability. This is work from the Heart Math Institute. They look at the heart under different emotional states, and they find it reacts radically different. And it's not just a felt sense in us that how we might feel different going from frustration to appreciation. And our heart registers that signal for sure. It also shows up in our environment, in the signal others get from us. I mean, you can feel the difference from somebody when they're all frustrated versus when they're full of appreciation. But the entire electromagnetic field around a person, which is largely generated by the heart, is more or less coherent as a result of that condition. So who we are, how we show up moment by moment really matters. And if we are in a condition where we're able to bring energy clearly through the body, absorb inspiration, find what lights up our heart, and bring it into action, which you see the Hara center, the lower abdomen, a crucial center for converting energy into matter. That's a center that controls movement and power in the human being, a key energy center. If we're able to bring energy through us, we can turn energy into things that matter. And there's an enormous resilience in being able to conduct energy. Because, go back to the first slide, life is a flow of energy. The alternative, though, is that tension and trauma and self-protection and all these ways we might try to wrap ourselves up in bubble wrap, it impedes resonance. It impedes resonance. Let me just give you an example. I happen to have a little bell here. I'm going to go on. Let me just change the setting here for a second. So I want you to see if you can hear this bell. If you can hear this bell, can you hear that? Okay, good. So that's what I'd call ringing your true note, being what you can be in the world. Here comes opportunity. Here you are. Opportunity strikes. And you can hear it. You light up and you resonate your signal into the world. You make your difference. But if we are full of tension, trauma, upset, frustrated, difficulty, here comes opportunity. That's what happens. Can you hear that? Not very well. It's become less sensitive, so it's not vibrating as much, and it can't radiate as much. So that's where the inner work is needed to have the effect we want to have in the outer world. And that's really where my journey took me, was into that inner work. And I found it by accident. It was, I was interested in energy, so I went into Aikido. And then my Aikido teacher said to me, if you really want to understand Aikido and how to work with energy, you have to start training in meditation. So I started training in Zen. Well, that was, 45 years ago. So what I've learned from that is that through physical practice, we're able to clear the bell. So whatever is yours to do, you'll light up and you'll make your difference. It really is that simple. And it really is that hard, because that inner work is an ongoing process. And you have to find some practice that resonates with you, that you love enough to keep at, that you love enough to keep doing. So for some people, how do you get that tension out of the body? How do you become more connected to what is going on? So that you can respond to it. A lot of times we feel, I want to protect myself because there's a lot of bad stuff out there. Yeah, I understand that. So how can we start to resource ourselves to be able to take it in and ground it? And that's where, again, a practice would come in. Let me ask you, Tracy, do we have time for a 3-minute practice or no? Do we have to go?
We do. Yes. And if you want to change your sound setting back to how it was before,
is that better?
Be better. Yeah.
Okay, good. Of course. Let me just give you an example of a practice, what I mean by practice, because I want you to just take stock of your condition right now, and 2 minutes from now, take stock again and just notice what changed. And if you would write that in the chat for me, I would so appreciate it. So I'm going to just stand up for this for just a moment. You can do this sitting or standing, but I'm going to invite you to we're going to just do a few breaths together. Breath is the crucial ambassador between conscious and unconscious mind. So we're going to use our breath. And I invite you to just stand on the earth or feel your feet on the earth. Soften your knees if you're standing, and feel your big toes on the earth. I'm going to kick off my shoes so I can feel the earth a little bit better. Yeah. And just let a breath come in and connect your feet into the earth, big toes into the earth, and exhale down slowly. Exhale down slowly. Relax your shoulders, making the exhale nice and long, nice and long. Relax, release. Let's try that again. Plug in your toes and just let that breath settle down. Let your arms drift up. On the inhale, plug in your toes and just expand through your fingertips. Expand through your fingertips. So let your eyes see 180 degrees, same time. Slow exhale, as if everything could drain down through your center, through your big toes, back into the earth. This way you can let go of anything that might get stuck. Let's do the first one more time. Breathing up and down center, just feel straight line, able to go to earth. Doesn't have to get stuck in you. Overhead, plug in your toes, big feeling. 180-degree vision, radiating into the field around you. Long, slow exhale. Beautiful. Final set. Up, down, center. Long, slow exhale. Relax, arms drift up, plug in the toes, and expand into the field around you, even as that exhale keeps you grounded, centered. And now just check in with yourself. What has changed? What has changed? How has hearing changed? Vision, or your breath, or your emotions? Any change you noticed? Any change you noticed? I'm curious about. Warmer, lighter, more connected. I want to point out that word connection because it's come up in our summit several times. Connection is not a concept. It's a felt sense. More aware of my heartbeat. That's a sense of being more alive. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then just by way of wrapping up, what I would say in this condition is that resonance is a fact. You are going to vibrate one way or another. How you resonate becomes a choice. And if you have practices that help energy move through you, you're going to be more resilient. You're going to be more responsive when inspiration strikes, and you're going to be able to radiate your true note into the world, making exactly your difference. So this practice that I shared with you, I call Hara breathing. Hara is that lower center. You see my recommended dose. 3 sets twice daily. I start every day this way. So to recap then, understand you are vibrating with the energy of life for better and worse. So why not make it better? Caring for the relationships you affect, the relationships you touch, because nobody but you stands at the intersection of where you are. You touch a unique part of the world. So caring in those relationships with the best you've got, that's your role. that's yours. And when we can resonate with the difference that is ours to make, we live exactly true to what the mind or the head will interpret as our purpose. True to purpose. So what I will say is that it's not only fun, this is where the joy and the resilience comes in. And if this is if this lights up something in you, then I would direct you towards zenleader.events for a free summit a month from now that World System Solutions is wonderfully one of the sponsors of. And I am very grateful to that. On living and leading with deep resilience for how you might build some of these practices or communities that help you be more resilient. Zenleader.events. So for you or anything you'd like to add to this?
Julie and Sammy.
Thank you, Dr. Whitelaw. I really appreciate all of this, and I practice qigong, and so I do appreciate the grounding of the energy and understanding that resonance is a fact that every human is resonating with something in any moment. And my question, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I observe a number of people in the world in our current climate that are resonating with fear, resonating with hostility, and resonating with others who are resonating with that.
Yes.
So, and they might say that they feel lit up by it.
Yes.
So how do they know the difference? How is conscious resonance with higher energies? How might I share with someone how it would feel different than resonating if everyone in your neighborhood hates so and so and you're resonant with it and you think that's good?
Yes. Lots of things can get amplified, and one of the challenges is that we're working with a nervous system that amplifies negative signals. And it was a good survival strategy. We're glad our nervous system evolved that way because it keeps us out of trouble. But the result is that you can, in a sense, build a lot more resonance. And you see this on social media all the time by communicating hate and violence and difficulty, negative emotions, right? Than with positive, uplifting things. And as you say, they light us up. The heart knows the difference, though. Remember that slide that showed the difference between frustration and appreciation. We know the difference between when we're being pulled up and dragged down, right? We know when we're being inspired or dragged down. To me, leadership is not dragging people down to the least common denominator of angry human beings. And there's a lot of that out there today that's passing as leadership. That's not real leadership. Leadership is pulling people up to what's possible for them. And so in a way, we're going to always have a mess in the world. It's always going to be messy. And because part of what we're creating or part of what we're working with is a human nervous system that responds, as you say, a great deal to negative inputs. And unfortunately, a lot of money can be made that way. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And when people will find a joy and a bigness that's possible when they're pulled up that you never find when you go down. It's the difference between heaven and hell. You know, it's easy to slide into hell, but it's a lot more fun to hang out in heaven. You know, it's a lot more fun to have joy and bliss and positive things. So part of how we're also put together is that we migrate toward things that make us happy. Again, unless we're so traumatized, but then it's again where the inner work happens, the inner therapies and the ways to work through trauma. It's a great question. And it's part of what I would say is just, we are the change we want to see in the world. I think we heard that in the last talk. So the more people who are radiating the possibility, the more we're going to have the mirror neurons click on and create what John would call the global coherence that pulls us up. So do your best. Do your best. Yeah.
I wonder if there are people who don't know that's possible, who don't know what it feels like to be pulled up. And how can we, I see that question in the chat too. How do we pull them up? Because there may be people that have never even had the experience of,
right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it often is from some wonderful teacher that we met, somebody who saw possibility in us, or a wonderful parent, or a wonderful mentor or elder in our community, who first pulls, you know, who shows us what's possible. You know, the people that I bet everyone on this summit can pick somebody in your life who pulled you up, who saw what was possible for you, who was a great teacher to you, who inspired you. I've been blessed to have many of these teachers in my life, and part of what we can be for one another is that even if somebody's disconnected, if you can connect with them and you're connected, you'll pull them up. One of the things I learned as an executive coach, I've worked with leaders for 30 years now, is if I could see their greatness and I could see who they are, I could hold that space and they could grow into it. Sometimes that's what we're doing as teachers, as coaches, as leaders, you know, as we build our team, right? So I'd say run your own experiment, but that's been my experiment. And people may not feel connected to life, but if you're connected to life and they're connected to you, they've at least got 1 degree of separation. They're at least more connected. Love goes a long way. Love goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tammy, would you like to speak in?
Yeah, thank you. This has been a really fascinating talk, and I found myself getting tearful in some moments. So I found that to be interesting. You mentioned that the electromagnetic field of our energy system is largely influenced by the heart center. And we've been working, a couple of people on this call, Sadie and Megan, we've been working with bioresonance devices lately, and I've just kind of been exploring them and finding them to be interesting. That said, the resonance device that I was using yesterday said my heart center in my heart chakra was low, And I just found myself yesterday really wanting to be alone, feeling like I was isolating a lot. So I was just contemplating on the question of how do you feel that the heart center impacts our ability as a species to consciously collaborate with each other? And how can we develop our heart center so that we can increase that capacity?
What a lovely question. First, I would say we're not always on all the time. You know, I think our moods and things are a little bit like the weather. I mean, they go up and down, and I think they're supposed to go up and down. I think that's kind of like how we're made. So I don't think we should get too down on ourselves when we have a bad heart day. But to your question, what I think is really wonderful, and this has been this is why I emphasize that hara breathing, even in this practice I shared with you, is that the heart will open when the body feels safe. When the body feels threatened, we protect ourselves. What's the first, if you had to model right now self-protection, if you were protecting yourself, what's the first thing you do? Right? That's the first thing you're protecting. So the heart feels safe when the hara is strong. And when we're in a safe situation, if we're not in a safe situation, you probably do want to protect yourself. But the hara, so part of what we're really developing with the lower center is our center of power. That's the center we really cultivate in Qigong and martial arts and things like that, right? But that center of power. So it's, and movement. And the more the hara is developed, it's almost like a container that holds the heart. Then the heart can do its heart thing, and it's pumping the iron, right? So it's going to radiate the magnetic field, and there it goes. On a good heart day, the field just expands, and everybody wants to be around you. That's going to foster collaboration.
A good heart day. I'm having a good heart day. I want to pronounce your name right. Dacia or Dosaya?
Okay, thank you. It is a very great journey today. I got a lot of tips, practical tips about climate change education and how I can use my body to work for me, but work for my body. And what I want to know is as I'm young and sometimes I pick up to be more caloric. How can I use this philosophy to control myself as when I am in a bad period and I went as anxiety and you understand what I want to say?
Almost. Did you have it?
What I would offer, I'm not sure I quite caught the question. So if I miss it, please come back and clarify. But a philosophy for controlling or developing oneself, one of the things I would offer, and I would offer this to educators generally, is that coming out of the head and integrating with the body is the key philosophy. Philosophy meant, the study of mind, right? I have a degree in philosophy. I understand what philosophy traditionally means, but it's the integration with the body that gets a felt sense of reality, a felt sense of life, a felt sense of nature, of people, of planet, of what care means. That is a physical feeling. And so things that will integrate, I'll say then philosophies of integration, mind-body integration, and practices of mind-body integration will help. What would you add to your question that I might have missed?
So, as we don't have the same tradition, we don't have the same believing and so on. So when you find some new things, wow. Where you think some new things, and as you want to use it or you practice it, it's like you become of other kind of people. You don't want to use yourself what you have in androgen, and you are going more of what they teach you or you are seeing in your community. So what I see today is very specific, and it is something that can everyone can use for himself, and it is very powerful, but it is very easy and very powerful when you use it. And I want to know if they have possibility to have some book or videos where I can find something like more that can help me to enhance my level in this kind of practice. Thank you.
Sure. You give a great example that we get constrained by the forms of our culture. Sometimes we're exposed to these things, sometimes we're not. What's in our community? What's so marvelous about this global community and this technology is we can reach across the globe and be available to one another to share what we've learned. What I've learned did not come from my culture either. It came from other parts of the world, right? So one thing I would offer again is at zenleader.events, you'll find zenleader.events. The Deep Resilience Summit is going to be loaded with practices and communities, and one might light you up. These are communities that oh, thank you so much, Megan. One might resonate with you, that you say, I want more of that practice. And even the Zen community that I'm a part of, daily meditation, that's available worldwide. That's not just in the United States or somewhere. That's available worldwide. So all of that it will be on offer at no charge in May at the summit. So if that calls you, come, tell people about it. Come learn resilience practices so we can be stronger together. Thanks.
This is wonderful. Thank you. So glad you have that summit coming up. Are there any other questions or comments?
Then I see a comment from Tanya about how we heal indifference, challenges, distance starts with our own attunement. I think it's a great observation. Our own attunement. So we pick up on what the issues are. Think back to Michael's talk. You could tell the way he thinks, the way he picks up on things is very particular, right? I like to bottom things up, as he said, right? Each of us has our way. We have our way, but that attunement. So that attunement that's how we hear opportunity knocking, or how we're attuning, listening for the zeitgeist, listening for the signals from the person we're in conversation with. And the more we listen, remember what I said about making maps of one another, the more we're getting in sync. And now with that, we can start to heal, right? Healing means to put things back together, right? So the thing we're healing is separation, the illusion of separation. The more we're connected to one another, connected to life, we're healing separation.
Thank you. It's very inspiring. Thanks for catching that comment. There's a little more time for discussion, and then we're going to hear from John Jones. So does anyone have any discussion instigators?
I love Tanya's comment in the chat about how we create deeper listening for deeper learning, deeper connection. You think about what listening is, that's where we're resonating with the signal. I mean, to listen is to let energy come in and start. We think of it as a passive part of communication, but it's actually incredibly active. That's where the inspiration's coming from. It's great.
Do you have any suggestions for like when the energy is coming at you that you don't really know how to resonate or assimilate into your being, like it's like Aikido or martial arts, kind of like transform the energy into something that feels more harmonious to both people, to your own body?
More harmonious. Well, I mean, that's exactly what Aikido is training in, is how to harmonize energy. And what you learn is to accept what's coming and then redirect it, as opposed to putting up a strong defense and trying to push it away. Now, in real life situations, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. So I'm not saying this is a panacea for all human situations, but what it's grounded in is being able to be in control of yourself, or not control like rigid control, but knowing your own triggers and working through your own triggers so that you're centered and grounded, so that you're able to not get pulled into, I'm going back to Julie's question, which was so good earlier, how not to get pulled into other people's grief and hatred and anger and the rage, even being able to accept where people are coming from without getting triggered. And then maybe there's one healing step forward, right? Maybe they can still be angry at the world, but there's one thing they can feel connected with you. Maybe that's the most you can do in that moment, that day. In other moments, maybe you can galvanize an entire community.
Love it. There's one more question. Please connect resonance and consciousness/unconsciousness within the youth. They are the future of humanity. How can we assist them?
How can we assist them? They're coming into quite a world, aren't they? And it's going to be hard for them not to think we could have fixed it. It's going to be hard for them to, right? And the consciousness, unconsciousness, already you're seeing a lot of mental illness, a lot of wellness issues, with the young people, right? It's in the zeitgeist, and we, again, there's no shortage of things that need to be healed. How can we create that healing? Work through our own triggers, ground ourselves, radiate love into the world, and make the difference, the relationships that we can touch with young people. If that's your profession, if that's what you do, the key skill young people are going to need is resilience. They really are. And being able, as earlier talks have talked about in climate education and things, having that intrinsic feeling of care for the people and planet around them, that will be really helpful. As Michael talked about, having, he called them hyper-local sustainability measures, that's going to be really helpful. That's going to be happening too. So we'll find the specific solutions. The people, just like you in your life, you will find the specific solutions that fit what you're trying to do from a place where you're most grounded, you're most clear, and listening you're like a well-tuned antenna. And as situations arise, you'll be able to give it the best you've got. That's, we aren't going to be able to fix it for the next generation, but we can help bring them into the world best resourced as we can. It's going to be messy, but I want to go back to the opening. We chose this time. And by how we live into it, we can make a difference.